Welcome to the third episode of Finance and Foundations with myself, Chris Brito, Joe Eden, and today we're joined by a guest, Kai Benjamin. Kai, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. I'm Kai Benjamin. I've been a lender in the bridging specialist and development space for about 15 years now. I know I look incredibly young for that, but I have been around for a while. Yeah,
we can tell. So normally we've spoken in depth within ourselves about various deals, client criteria, things that are important. So today we thought we'd bring on a guest who's got experience on the other side, the dark side, not the dark side, the side that provides all the deals for all of our various clients, to get a much better understanding of what's important from a lender's perspective, what red flags to look out for, etc., etc. But we'll just flow the conversation like we normally do and see what happens. So on that note, what are the biggest red flags that scare lenders or that lenders look out for?
Apart from applications from Bridgemore Capital, you mean? Okay. Yeah, I mean, look, there's a number of things that happen across like the course of an application, but effectively, I think kind of, if I talk about the market and kind of what we've seen recently, I'd say that bridging in kind of like the development space has become far more retail over the last 5-10 years. You know, it's more accessible to professionals who maybe are thinking, I'm going to invest in assets. Quite often, if you think about market now where interest rates have gone, a lot of the issues we've seen as lenders on the back end have been borrowers that maybe don't have a deep asset position, liquidity, the ability to be agile when things change. And like we've been in a market where we've seen rates change hugely. Obviously, things are starting to settle a little bit more, go back to norm. We've seen loads of rate reductions the last week or two, especially in like the space we work in. But that's a huge thing, I think, in terms of like, what's your borrower profile look like if a plan doesn't go to schedule?
Yeah, so as an example, someone bought a property for 200 grand. They were going to do a refurb on it for 100 grand. Something happened with build costs, like it happened during COVID. Things went through the roof. Yep. If that borrower then needed more money and they've not got any other assets or other good net position or any other cash flow behind them, then obviously there's a big risk.
It's a big problem, yeah. And a lot of loans are extending, you know, like because either projects run over, there might be less options around what their exit was going to be first of all. So even if you think about like an extension period, if you've got a borrower that's retained their interest for the whole of their, original loan term, they then need 3 or 6 months more, unless they can pay that up front or can service that on a monthly basis. That's a huge issue. So I think a few kind of lenders probably have run into issues with borrowers that aren't that liquid or are starting out in the journey, you know.
But you're not going to say no to someone that hasn't got any other assets behind them. You're just going to have a look at the project.
Yeah.
The chances of how risky it is.
Well, and who are they partnering with, right? So if they got really good professionals on board, is it like a fixed price contractor that works with their contractor? What certainty can you gain out of that? You know, if they are professionals and they're kind of entering that space, presumably they have got some firepower behind them to have been able to pay for, you know, your deposit monies, you know, the first drawdown of works, things like that. So what other cash flow have they got? You know, are they earning good income, whatever? There's going to be merit to it as well. So it's not all like doom and gloom.
Of course. But you would say that your biggest red flags come from the customer's perspective opposed to the project?
I think we'll talk about market
with customers first.
I'm starting there just because of market really and what we're seeing, I think. But yeah, generally there's that's one thing.
Sure. After the list.
I mean, look, in 15 years I've seen a few things, right? That's a big list. So that's one thing. I think kind of valuation and price point's been interesting. Like again, we talk about market. Like it's a bit of buyer's market right now. I know this might not go out immediately when we're talking about it, so that'll age well if that comment's wrong. But a bit of a buyer's market at the moment. You know, I think there's been a bit of stagnation in kind of what we've seen in the market. Not everywhere. Obviously, there's pockets where things are flying off the shelf. You know, people are still finding value and wanting to sort of transact. But yeah, I think price point is interesting, especially on projects like refurbs. Like GDV is like an unknown quotient, right? So are you going to deliver the project at the level and quality that you want? What's the market going to look like when you finish a project? Obviously lenders are going to take their position at healthy loan to GDV levels to make sure they've got kind of a bit of buffer in there. But yeah, that's kind of another piece, I think. Valuation.
And do you make any presumptions or your own mind up about the GDVs that are coming from values? Because obviously, from a valuation perspective, all lenders tend to just rely on whatever the value was said. But have you, in any of your previous roles, looked at those GDVs and disagreed with the valuers after doing your own research or anything like that?
Yeah, sometimes.
Always just rely upon that valuation piece.
No, I think you've got to have the right professionals behind you. So you got to certainty in who you're working with, and ultimately the extension of that is to clients, right? So you've got to be, it's part of your service and your product you're offering. So you've got to be comfortable with that. But you've got to, as a lender, you always have to just test the water as well, either on the MVs or the GDVs. What's out there, how marketable is this in comparison to what else is on the market? Especially if you look in prime central London and places like that, where the difference between a lower ground floor flat, a ground floor flat, and a second floor flat with views, balconies, all that kind of stuff, natural light, square footage is really important. But what about usable square footage? All those kind of things really come into play a huge amount. And the functionality of a property. So, I mean, Joe, you will know this from your background as well massively, and you guys in terms of the projects that you guys are supporting for your clients. But with PD and with refurbs and repurposing commercial buildings, that's really difficult sometimes to find usable, functional space, because there's less and less stock that's available because people have been onto this for a long time. PD rules have been pretty relaxed. You get to a point where, actually you're trying to shoehorn a project or more units in to make it profitable to a place. And then what's left at the end of it?
Maybe sellable, not sellable units. Yeah. We felt that as well. And the issue you have on the back end is, as a developer, you've got a debt position to pay. You deliver a site, it gets valued at one figure, and then you're trying to reduce the value, the price to get them gone. And then the lender's concerned because you've reduced the price on the earlier units, so the leverage position isn't changing. So it's quite a hard thing to balance.
Sorry, before we come back to you, just going back to what you said, when it comes to the build costs, do you look at these three things separately, as in build costs, consultant fees, and contingencies? Because I know that sometimes we'll get a build cost from a client and they've just got build costs. And sometimes we have to dig a bit deeper, obviously, to make sure they're including consultants and then also contingencies. Do you get a lot of developers that throw these over to you and haven't thought about the consultants and the contingencies, and then sometimes those two added on can actually then kill the deal?
Yeah, sometimes that can happen. And I guess the difficulty is whenever you're looking at kind of a new proposal or a new project at inquiry stage, you can't look at every single detail, because the economies of scale don't work for you guys in terms of wanting to sort of see, well, have you got appetite for it? Are you looking at it? So at the start, sometimes you do just let that slip and you're not kind of I see everything on paper. But so that can lead to further down the line, if the borrower's not been properly coached, or again, they're not experienced enough, they've not got a good broker on board, it can mean that they've not considered those things for sure. And actually what's interesting is some lenders will say build costs are covered, we want to see a contingency from the borrower, and actually the professional fees we want you to pay for as well, we won't include them in the build cost. Okay. So that's an interesting point, I think, for a lot of borrowers to consider. Others lump it in with build costs and do fund that as well. So, because it is an essential part of actually, the project, it needs to, run through it, and it is it'd be a cost to them or to any other builder that's looking to sort of carry out the works.
Sure. Perfect. Thank you. Sorry, interrupted. That's good. You about to get into your flow?
No, I think that's an interesting point, because I think it's based on that point you were just talking about, consultants, contingency, and all that stuff. We find that if it's a contractor developer, they've got all of them ironed out. Their schedule has it all in all the time. 9 times out of 10, when we do our appraisals, we'll go contingency. We'll always do 10%, because in our experience, we find that IMS to IMS will vary slightly, but a lot of the time a lender might say, yeah, we'll do 5, and IMS goes to site and says, I'm not putting my name to 5, we're doing 10. Or airspace, it seems to be a bit more like 20, which is a lot. But usually we find, going off topic slightly, but we usually find that IMS would do that because they're coming in at quite an early stage. And obviously on development, a lot of people don't want to spend money on architect, engineer, and getting design ready until post-completion. So recently I've seen an IMS do that and gone, well, you haven't got your design ready, so your cost at this level could go up. So the contingency stays there, because once you've designed the building and you've got your steel spec and all that stuff post-completion, you might go over budget. And we've done that ourselves. We've completed on a site as a developer and been nearly 700 grand over budget and then have to redesign it again and then again, timber frame, steel frame, all that stuff. And that's quite from a lender's perspective, if you've just not had a contingency or minimal contingency, you both are to blame, arguably. You know, the lender's not put the right mechanics in place for a borrower to deliver, and the borrower's not done enough due diligence or work pre-completion and not got enough around them. So if they got no assets and you've gone over by hundreds of thousands of pounds, the loan's getting called in and or you're losing your house or something.
Yeah.
PGs.
Yeah. PGs.
And again,
Gone.
I don't think this is like a widespread kind of position, but like I do think there are lenders out there, because debt's really prevalent and bridging lenders have then gone into refurb and then by proxy have gone into development. I think there are lenders out there that don't really understand development.
1,000,000%
or refurb very well. And it's easy to sort of, I think from a lender's perspective, you're always thinking about, right, how can I grow my loan book? What, additional exposure can I get? How can I support other borrowers? And it's easy to sort of grow into a space which you then don't understand. The pools are very different, even in terms of like the logistics and the mechanics and the administrative burden of actually supporting a project through its kind of entirety. So, you disperse the first day one advance, guess what? You're in bed with that borrower and you're on that project throughout. You need to manage that as if it's it's a full-time job for the back end, teams within lenders. And again, it could be that the underwriters and the credit teams and the appetites bang on, they really understand the projects. But if they're not involved along that course of, the project, and perhaps the post-completion teams aren't as technically trained, they're not as, knowledgeable about the projects. Like that could be a huge issue, like in terms of actually the service and the management and even the deployment of drawdowns and things like that. It can be stagnation, there can be, it can be slower, it can hold up a project, and all it takes is, a bit of a delay in a drawdown, which is going to pay your contractors and your professional team that are working on the project. If they start walking off, you can create your own problem as a lender.
That's a brilliant point as well, because lenders, we say it all the time, there's so many lenders that come from like a banking background and they don't get the practical side of on-site. And we've seen it loads of times. The lender just thinks like, oh, a drawdown's a week late and you can get people back. But in local areas, that doesn't happen because all the subcontractors talk and know each other. Getting them back is a big momentum thing. And then you've lost trust. Are they going to do this work, and are they going to get paid, or are you going to miss it again? Because that's what happens. If you've got 100 grand bill to pay on a development site and you can't pay it, and then you're 2 weeks late, and then everyone pulls off site and then getting them back, you've lost all that trust. You've probably fallen out with some of them because that's just the nature of the world. And it just puts the project in jeopardy massively, and it takes so much to get it on track. So you have to have the cash as a developer to deploy it, which a lot of people don't, because it's just the nature of the world.
Yeah, they want to be use their money as much as possible, have as many sites on the go as possible.
Exactly.
But even the time impact on that, so the team walks off site, could be a month before you get somebody else back on. Realistically, and to win trust, to get the right team back on, and actually, are you then left with a B team who know that you actually haven't paid on time, that are like, oh, we'll risk it, we'll chance it, but then what's your quality going to look like? There's a huge amount of issues there. But
And I had it on one of mine. If you remember from a particular lender, they were doing a heavy refurb on a project. My client, QS went out to view the works that had been undertaken, put their report together. This lender was meant to review it within a 48-hour period. Chose to wait another 6 days, and then found that in the report it said that this report cannot be relied on for lending purposes. Right? So now they're going back to the valuer or the QS. So then the QS is then having a bit of a bum fight with the lender over this. It's taken another 3 or 4 days. If the lender had reviewed that report within a day rather than waiting 5 days to review it, that problem would have saved 4 or 5 days. And as a result, they didn't get their drawdown for 2.5, 3 weeks, and they did lose part of the team that was on it. And then the project ended up getting delayed by 2 months because of that little part.
And I think like we talked about being pragmatic on the back end as a lender. Like, if you have an issue in your process, you cause an issue like that, and then you want to hammer the borrower at the back end.
Exactly.
That's what you have to have the presence of mind to understand that you've got to support them, and where maybe you've fallen down on that. Like, it's a partnership all the way through, really. So,
it has to be. I think as soon as you go into agreement and you're signing contracts, everything is a partnership from my perspective.
Totally. I see a client who we didn't actually broker the initial deal, we was trying to exit him. But last year, or about 18 months ago, client down like Southwest Way, he had used the lender, I won't say that what the name is, and every drawdown was late, every single drawdown for at least 2 weeks, some as much as like 4 or 5 weeks. And then he got to the end of the project was not done. And they put him into receivership straight away, just like that. And then he went into this legal battle for like a year. And then I think he eventually got them out of receivership, but he couldn't refinance whilst it was in receivership. Loads of legal costs, loads of stress, loads of issues. That's just insane. Just because the lender didn't want to admit that their process was broken and they didn't get the money out quick enough, or they're just in a dream world, they just think that regardless of their money coming in, the project will still continue. It's not how it works. It's madness.
But lenders get it wrong. Like it happens. Like, you know.
But the worst ones are the ones that don't admit when they're wrong. Pretend that they're just trying to cover out. And it's just so frustrating because,
I think there can be a culture, you know, especially like if a process, you know, it could be people, it could be a process, it could be something that kind of is completely, you know, wasn't trackable or traceable in terms of something that arises, you know, that causes an issue, you know, from our side as lenders. I think you're right. Like I think there sometimes is a concern to sort of not show the error in your ways because you're concerned that either a broker or a borrower will jump on that and be like,
don't admit fault.
Yeah, exactly. You're now liable or whatever it may be. But, you know, whether it's at the front end of a transaction or managing sort of a project along the way, there's always going to be delays on all sides. There's going to be mistakes made. There's going to be, you know, situations that are not ideal or not as first told, you know, or, you know, work out differently. But you just got to work through it and be pragmatic.
I mean, that's why from our side, we have lenders come in all the time. We have many meetings most weeks with different lenders. And as you mentioned, Kai, some lenders will start in bridging, go to refurb, then development. And if they've only done a couple of deals in development, we usually wouldn't use them.
There's this point is that they're so risk adverse as well.
Yeah. Because they might not understand the risk, they might not understand the mechanics and getting a deal over the line and the post completion stuff. At which point the client's paid tens of thousands of pounds worth of fees potentially, to then have issues on the back end to not be able to draw down is a big issue.
Yeah.
But touching on the monitoring surveyor stuff, so just for clarity, we've spoken about QSs, IMSs, MSs. They're all the same thing.
Yeah.
Asset managers, there's a few. Well, asset managers are normally an internal.
Yeah, but the perks of them is like it's the same. Yeah. But yeah, monitoring surveyors are
Killers?
Yeah, can be killers just as much as surveyors, and I do get it. But you've got a lender who wants to lend, you've got a borrower who wants to borrow. And we talk about it all the time. Like if you're doing a development, let's say it's a 9-unit scheme, Essex Way, you might spend, there are 3 or 4 grand on evaluation. You might spend 4 grand, maybe more, on a monitoring surveying report initially. And you might go and do, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 grand on lenders legals. It's a lot of money just out the door. And you could have one of them pieces go wrong. And the frustrating thing for us is a lot of the time, monitoring surveyors promote an issue and they're not open to listening to a solution, which is really frustrating because it's about PI, or they've used the BCIS data portal. Like we've had situations where they've said, IMS may have said that bill cost is wrong. Contractor's gone and got like bricklayers tender packages, carpentry tender packages, window tender packages, gone, these are all my costs. Okay, one might, if you had to step in as a lender and finish it, arguably, like you may have a relationship with John down the road because doing your windows, you might get it a bit cheaper. But you can't disagree with every package, I don't think. And then we've also had other situations where a contractor may say, well, we'll PG this, do like no cost overrun and all that stuff, some cool things. And from a monitoring surveyor's perspective, just not moving whatsoever feels frustrating. Like even if it's a little bit or an understanding, some logic, that kills deals.
Yeah, so as an example, I've got one at the moment. So clients turn around and saying, these are my build costs, these are my consultants, these are my contingencies. However, the contractors agreed to charge us no labour as they're going to get profit on the back end. How does a lender look at that kind of setup?
That's an interesting one, isn't it? We've gone through that ourselves as well. And we've had a mainstream bank be absolutely fine with it. But some lenders hate it. Not hate it, but they just won't because of the step-in situation. If they're stepping in, they're paying it. But so yeah, I guess it's just lender to lender. But I find that frustrating because, like, from a developer's perspective, that's almost like that's just the best scenario, right? Because that could be on performance based, that end bit, they're getting it at cost, and it just makes sense. But
surely is a positive, because your contractor's now got a vested interest in the project, opposed to having the opportunity to just get up and walk away.
I think the only downside is contractors having a link into the project can be a bit conflicting sometimes, I guess. I get it.
In terms of cutting corners?
Cutting corners, you're then in bed together, and if their cash flow, if something happens in their life, we're all humans.
Or one of their other projects.
Or one of their other projects goes a bit sideways. Unfortunately, construction's quite a sharky world, and you kind of indirectly can get pulled into that, even if you manage it well. So I actually get it both sides.
Is that why you're learning jiu-jitsu?
Yeah. I think commercially it makes complete sense, doesn't it?
Yeah.
If you're a developer, you're the end user, the borrower, like it makes complete sense for you to, leverage what you've got and make the project work commercially in whichever way, shape or form, right? I think as a lender, that's where it becomes difficult, because our default mode, and again, it's not necessarily the product you put out there or the package you actually offer or the service that you actually do and the reality, but you're always thinking, okay, I've got to mitigate the risks here. What if the borrower fails to deliver, fails to pay their contractor, something happens, they aren't liquid enough, they have to abort from the deal, we've got to take it over, we've got to look at this. And at that point, you are reliant on your IMS to say, here's your benchmark figures, anyone can step in off the street and build it out for this, including you if you wanted to take it over, you don't even have to do that. And so that's a consideration that we always have to take. I think for me and my mentality, and kind of a lot of the lenders I've worked with have shared this sort of thought process, which is, how big is the project? How much could go wrong on this? If you're talking about 100 houses in a big development on a site that's huge, it's not out of the ground, there's all these question marks about what's going to happen. That's something that you want certainty. You want
ecology,
determination.
100%. There's an error. There's
so much that could happen to get out of the ground. If we're talking, again, sometimes there's equal challenges with existing properties and refurbing them. Until you get under the skin, you pull it backwards to brick or whatever, you don't know what you're going to get, right? So that's a similar, analogy to sort of getting out of the ground. From then on, it should be plain sailing, or relatively plain sailing, as long as the payments go through. Your professional team's there, your builders are doing what they need to do. But I think from a lender's perspective, we always have to balance that piece, which is what if it does go wrong? Yeah, because it can, and we've seen it go wrong.
Yeah,
and it does happen. And even with the best team, the best borrower, experience in play, cash available, it can go wrong.
Yeah,
and so there is always that that other piece. I'm conscious. I promoted being pragmatic and working with a borrower. There is a point where you can't make that backwards.
But sometimes we find it, and I definitely from a lender's side, you're going to have to do that as well. We sometimes have to educate people in that way. If you get a valuation back and the GDV is downvalued, and you get the build cost and they're over-engineered, you have a valid conversation. You can bring that up and have a good conversation. It's down to them to kind of go and do a deeper dive. You might have both of them professionals have done a bad job, or however you want to label it. But if you're the borrower, there's almost an element of you need to take responsibility. If someone says that the bill cost is 200 grand and you've just accepted it and you've not done any deep dive or DD on it, I think that it can't just be that's right. Yeah, it's on them a little bit. And then same as GDV, if you're in this area and you've had a value come from London to Southend as an example and valued something, and no, that's way out, I'm not being over the top here, that then makes you then have to be more pragmatic as a borrower. But we see some people do that, and you go, are you confident in your valuation? We know it's been downvalued here. What's the choice? Well, you got to go and get another valuation done. How much is that? 3 grand. It's a lot of money, but do you want the project to go ahead or not? If you're so confident on the valuation and you've kind of taken stock on it after this down valuation, and a lot of people don't want to go for the second valuation, which probably means that the value is broadly right, potentially, because it kind of, and I think that's also another balance. If you're going to be a developer, you have to be a bit, ballsy. I couldn't think of more of my body.
It's the right adjective. I think that's perfect.
Just don't let Murph get the boards, because they're going to hop.
So aside from that, any other risks
involved, or red flags that you've come across that lenders have looked at when you've put your projects across?
I think it's already been mentioned, but not having the consultants in the pot, and happens all the time. There's nothing wrong with this because sometimes it is legit, but whenever we get an inquiry, we always run our internal appraisal before we go to any lenders. You say your GDV is this, your purchase price is this, your build cost is this. We'll run it. We'll work out what leverage you need based on that, working it back, and we'll usually add things in. We always put consultants in as a piece that's funded by the lender. And whenever we put that in, lenders like to see typically 5 to 10% of your build costs allocated to consultants. So that's engineers, architect, your SAP, acoustic, all of the bits that you need to deliver a project. And so many people say, I've had my architect quote, it's £1,000, it's this. And it's like, that's just too cheap. Or if your architect does a little bit more work, there's not a budget for it. And if your personal circumstances change or you go over budget here, you're then not going to be able to pay your consultants to deliver the project.
So identifying red flags within their breakdowns, yeah?
Well, and sometimes you might say, I've assumed 5% in here, and they may say, well, actually, I've got a consultant list here, and I've gone to all of these consultants professionally, and I've got their quote. It's kind of the same as what we were saying about with build costs. Sometimes you've got, we use this pub analogy a lot, but it's legit. Dave down the road said he can do your HMO refurb for 50 grand when it's everyone else is refurbing for 150. It's the same as in the consultants world. Like, you could know all these consultants and they're, oh yeah, I'll do that for you. But a lender doesn't want to see that. They want to see a formal appointment that you've got collateral warranties for and all that stuff. So the project can be delivered either with or without you. That's really important. And we've had it ourselves where we've got, as I said to you, we completed, post-completion, go through your tender process, get it designed. Your engineer says you need 4 times more steel tonnage than you thought you needed, and that's just because it's their opinion, it's their PI, etc. And then you have to go and spend another 20 grand on getting it all redesigned because that just doesn't work because you're out of budget. And you might do that again and again, or you might go, I don't know, like you might have not factored. I don't know, this is slightly off piece, but like right of light, stuff like that comes up quite a lot. And if your consultant package is so small and you've not got enough, like it's so to the line, if something does pop up that you're not expecting and you haven't got enough in the pot or yourself to pay for all these different bits and bobs, the project just stalls and then starts costing you tens of thousands of pounds a month in interest and
highways, howls.
Yeah, all that stuff. Utilities. How don't we talk about that? That's the most frustrating thing in any project.
Why do we refuse to talk about utilities?
Utilities are just insane. Utilities, they're really slow. Arguably, it's not at the start of the project. It's not a tangible. You don't pay for utilities in the same way as you pay for building materials and they're on site and there's value. You might pay a 20 or 30 or 40 grand bill for utilities and they might not be installed for 6 months. A lot of people don't like doing it, or it's just like, oh, I'll put that to the back. But yeah, utilities could make or break a project.
So advice to developers: get utilities done early doors.
Massively.
Early doors.
Yeah. Do you find like with your client base as well, like with Bridgemore, you'll get maybe professionals or developers that they've done a few projects or they're on their way up with, like, they've done investment, they want to do some value add to properties, identified sites, you've got like a entrepreneurial mindset, they're opportunistic, they're kind of like seeing what's out there. Do you find that you often give them a bit of a reality pill in terms of like some of the things that they look at that are just a bit pie in the sky when they look at stuff, or do you have to coach them through certain things, even though maybe they've got some experience, but actually you see it in a different way because you're not connected to a project? You're kind of like one step away from it,
You tend to run appraisals on most projects.
I do on everyone. I just think it's the most important thing, especially on development, because so many people miscalculate the finance costs because of the drawdown piece, or miscalculate contingency. Like, if your build cost hasn't got contingency, let's say it's £1 million build, not got contingency in, well, that's 100 grand. You haven't got consultants in there, that might be 50 grand. Where's your build warranty? Where's your building control? It might be 20, 30 grand. And then your finance cost is based on a lower figure. And you add all that in, and that's hundreds of thousands of pounds. And sometimes I look at a project, it might even be an existing client we've done 30 appraisals for, and it will still be the same thing. This makes no margin. That's it.
And you can see it quite easily, can't you? Like, in terms of like total cost for build versus the size of the internal net and gross, external, and then looking at what the price per square foot to build is.
Yeah, you sometimes only need to do an appraisal, but my odd mind has to do it just to document that I'm right. But I will
We'll do it all out here. Don't worry about it.
Morbid curiosities, but yeah, keeps you doing it. Yeah, that's interesting.
I think that's important because there is an emotion, or I really want on that point of like developers scaling up, whether anyone admits it or not, because we've all been there. Is you go from you've done a few buy-to-lets, then you go and do a HMO, then you do a bigger HMO, and then you want to do a commercial conversion, you do a development. As you're scaling up, there's still so much emotion and a little bit of ego in like grow, especially with Instagram the way it is nowadays. Like everyone wants to be, I've just got this offer accepted on this massive scheme, and there's a little bit of ego, there's a little bit of emotion attached to that. So some people, like I've probably done it myself. You've got a project, you love the location, it is a bit of an ego piece, and you start massaging the numbers, and then someone picks it up, like one of us, and we'll go, your bill cost is £1,400 a square metre. It's never going to happen. Or like that's 500 grand out on your GDV because no flats have ever sold for that thing.
Yeah,
in that area.
in that area.
Yeah. Maybe that's our point, to encourage customers to bring their projects to us, allow us to do our due diligence on them before we even got anywhere near a lender. Does a lender appreciate brokers that do that rather than just chuck everything to you, expect you to do all the due diligence?
Yeah, I mean, that comes back to Joe's point earlier about like the borrower has got to kind of kick the tires and do their own DD, and whether that's by engaging you guys who also have experience, in those projects and stuff. But yeah, of course, if from our perspective, we're thinking we want partnerships with people that know what they're doing, know their clients, know the projects, because that means higher conversion rate for us. It means, quality projects that are going to exit, loans that will be good. I mean, it's a no-brainer, of course.
You better take us out for dinner.
Yeah, I should do.
One big question, and you've got to be honest. As a broker, what would you prefer? One-liner or the most amount of gumph of a project you've ever seen in your life that's going to take you hours to read?
I'm glad we're on the same page, because I was going to say exactly what you just said. Do you want everything about the borrower, everything about a project, or do you just want to look at the project first of all? But then do you not want to waste your time if the borrower's not right?
Because sometimes there's lots of questions there.
But yeah, questions. So we sometimes we know if we know what lender is going to, and we know who that BDM is, we know they're not going to read it all. Or if they do, they'll pick it up and spend 3 days. Take 3 days to not even review it, but still reply.
Well, that's
so
yeah, you've got the right intuition. I think it's about the recipient, right? So my honest reaction was, if I get a project that's got every bit of information I want under the sun, by default, that would be my preference.
Of course, but it won't be organised.
If I look at my diary and I've got back-to-back meetings for 4 hours, and I'm looking at my team and I know they're all busy and I can't delegate, I'd rather have a one-liner, because guess what? That works with my SLAs for that day. That's my honest opinion. But brilliant. I'd rather be killed with the detail.
Yeah.
Because from my perspective as well, like I know there's a time investment, and again at the top of that funnel. So think about it from an inquiry perspective, looking at proposals, looking at projects, looking at a case that's been presented. The top of that funnel is wide, it's broad, right? Not all of those are going to go through. We're in a competitive market. Appreciate I'm not going to always be the lender of choice, right? Fine. However, if I've got the detail, and I can pick and choose what I want to see then from that detail. So if you killed me with like reams and reams and reams of lines of narrative on the project, the borrower, everything I need there, you've given me loads of attachments, I can choose out of those what's most important to me to pick and review. So my default as a lender would be kill me with the detail. I think from your guys as a broker, the expectation and my thought process is, if you've given me all that information up front, you kind of said like, you want to go down this course, you want to give me some terms of that, you've had the information. So the onus is on me then, the time to sort of like, just put holes in your court.
It doesn't always work that way. We do it all the time, and lenders sometimes issue terms and partway through the underwrite, and they're like, what about that? And it's like, it was on the first line. Or, I said there was a liquidation.
It's the most frustrating thing on this planet. Like, don't ever bring something up later on down the line that was already made very, very clear to you at the start of the journey.
But there definitely is an equilibrium. So like I said, if like a one-liner is not enough, especially if we're talking about a proposal that's got works, all that kind of stuff. No, it's just never going to be enough. I'll see that and I'll be like, do I want to deal with this broker? Do I want to deal with this proposal, or do I just say no because it's not worth my time?
Yep. Fair.
Again, if you give me too much detail, I've got to trudge through that, or the team's got to trudge through that. It's quite a lot. So there is a happy medium, which is like, if you guys know what is most important to us as lenders, then you can kind of and understand exactly what to frame for us in the right way. And every lender's going to be slightly different, but overall, we're going to have a similar sort of mindset around what to look for.
That's arguably part of our skill as well, though. We need to know who we're speaking to, which lenders we speak to. We know which lenders roughly do what, so we'll position opportunities slightly differently. But it was more just understanding what is important for you as a lender. And yeah, sometimes we know lenders don't look at all that gumph, which is why I asked.
The kind of framing that I prefer most as a lender is like probably more detail on the asset. So like if you say, oh, there's a refurb project, someone wants to convert a 3-bed house into a 6-bed HMO under PD, it's not in an Article 4 area, but you don't give me the address for it. I'm like, okay, it's not very useful. I can't see like who the seller's going to be. You know, is it in a area that's near, you know, a university, near a hospital, near whatever, where the key workers are? Like, what kind of HMO are you doing? What's your budget look like? You know, if you give me a plan which tells me that it's going to be a pretty professional HMO with 6 beds, 6 en suites, it's done to a good standard, budget looks good on it, and it's like for young professionals in a town or city that actually is really nice and captive for that, I'm like, cool, good product, makes sense. There's a captive audience. That'll be positive. Do I need to know all of the projects that borrower's done? He's done 15 HMOs. That's a one-liner. That's enough for me. If you then can't show me that he's done 15 HMOs during the underwriting process, during the application, that's a different thing. So I want a one-liner for that. I don't need all that information. But some lenders do accept that. What is just a one-liner?
That's experience covered, tick.
Yeah.
They don't go to know the addresses of all these projects.
But I think that potentially comes down to your relationship with that lender.
Yeah.
And maybe how you guys work. So it's like, well, these guys actually do kick the tires on their borrowers. And also, most lenders want an A&L statement for their borrower because they want to know if there's a PG involved, what's their net worth. Sure. And they stand up behind that PG. And often on that, you've got A&L statement that's got loads of houses that are bringing in rates that are much higher than the market rent for a single. Then you can work that out as a lender, right?
100%.
So you don't.
We'd always have the address on the A&L anyway, but I'm just, for me, it was just like, I've had clients before that have had experience of doing 10 projects in the past, but they've sold them all.
Yeah.
So then there's no
tangible assets there to show that they've done the project.
Yeah.
Yeah. But some lenders will have, and you guys will know this more than me, some lenders will have a previous project schedule and an A&L. So it's kind of like, show me what your projects look like. What ones were they? You know, what was the cost? When did you buy it? When did you sell it? You know, all that kind of stuff. So that's useful. So some things you need just a one-liner, you know. Even A&L, like I don't want the A&L up front all the time. You know, if it's a simple project, it's quite small. You tell me they've got they're property professional. They've got other assets. They've got buy-to-lets, 10 buy-to-lets. I don't need to know the value of them. I need to know how leveraged they are. They've got assets in the background. Great. Fair. That's
I was going to say, we try to get that up front, especially on development. We go A&L, developer CV, professional CV.
Yeah.
And some people don't have it, but they will create it. And then them creating it sometimes sparks them thinking about the structure a little bit more as well and get them a little bit prepared and organised. So I think it's important just for us to be going through that at the start.
I think assets and experience is massively important because lenders always going to ask you at some point, and us getting it up front, we know what the clients get themselves into, and again, which lenders to actually go to in the first place.
Yeah.
But then also, it does open up our eyes when we do ask for their asset schedule, if there's other opportunities to structure the deal differently. If they've got equity available, less than 70% in some of the properties, and there's a chance to increase their money towards purchase price, etc.
So that is a really key point, because a lot of brokers and introducers, or even direct clients, aren't thinking that way in terms of like, oh, can we structure a deal differently? And some lenders do it, and some, like I would say, some mediums are brilliant. They're technical, they're thoughtful. They're like, right, this doesn't fit, but what can we do to support the borrower? But if you're doing it as a broker, I think that's kind of, I feel like that's part of your job. Yeah, I do think it's part of it for that. But again, that speaks to sort of the varying degrees of introducing business and, you know, people in the market. Again, there's lots of different ways of doing things. Yeah.
We get sometimes developers who have not heard or experienced like equity. So if you buy a development site, you haven't got cash to do the whole project. We might get debt, like a development loan, and equity for the rest. And we've had clients come over and say, I want debt and equity. So we start looking at it and go, why would you give away equity of your project when you've got a portfolio there we could just cross charge against? So even, as you say, sometimes clients come in with a different idea of what they think they need, and then our job is to try and save them some money by going, no, don't give your profit away, just leverage a bit here, and that's the solution. So that's important for us as a advisor, if you like.
Are there obviously from a lender perspective, like are there common frustrations that you get that you see across like all lenders or a lot of lenders, that maybe is your turn to sort of hate on lenders, and I can kind of try and rebut that and be like, we're not that bad.
We love everyone.
For us.
I think it's an interesting question, but I think there's multiple things that we can hate about lenders, but a lot of the time a lender's got one of them. I've never seen a perfect lender. I don't think that exists.
At the start, maybe.
Maybe at the start, 100%.
When they're really trying to perform, when they're doing everything right, and then they let the guard slip on the next one.
Well, yeah, or yes, on the first deal they might be fantastic, but like you said, it's like, how does someone perform when things start going wrong, or something was not as it seems? You know, we're huge on working with people that think solution minded, and try and work around rather than just says computer says no, which is just a shit attitude. But yeah, there's multiple things that as brokers, lenders can do to essentially piss us off. Because we want good working relationships with everyone, but you got to work with us. And as long as someone's working with us, someone's communicative, I'm happy with most lenders. But on the development side,
My main frustration, I'll keep it short, is kind of communication. So you've got, it could be a 5-person lender or 100-person, whatever it is, big or small lender. And the most frustrating thing is we have people coming into the office, salespeople, whoever it is, saying, we can do this, promoting themselves, promoting their products. Do they do commercial browsing, HMO? Yeah, they do developments. No, they don't, whatever. And then client comes in, we go to them with a deal, everything's good up front, and the client commits or, progresses, and then that person disappears and then reappears when there's some credit to be taken. That is so infuriating.
Yeah.
Or they don't appear when the deal goes south. And there's a couple of lenders who do it really well, and when an underwriter is saying, oh, what about this, what about that, they will step in and be like, no, this is what we agreed, this is what we're doing. That's a powerful lender, I feel, where they've just got the right mechanics in place the ball.
Are you talking about like the sales team, the guys that you have interaction with the most at the start, and who are your contacts like throughout most of the project or the process and the application, and then that separation between sales and credit and underwriting, and that being the
it's not even a I agree, but there's sometimes not a separation. You can see they're in the emails, you can see stuff's exploding,
but they're just quiet.
Yeah. The minute some good news happens or something good, like all we do,
and it's like you haven't done anything. You've just sat there and buried your head in the sand.
Because as brokers, then what we look for is if something goes wrong, which inevitably it does, like we're not that naive, like we know stuff goes wrong all the time, we always want to sort it. We need to know that that person who is promoting that business has got our back and the client's back.
100%.
Yeah.
We look ridiculous if we say, oh, we need this document, and it's a ridiculous request, or just something. For someone to even say it is ridiculous, we're not going to get round it, sorry, but let's do this and this. That's also fine.
Yeah.
We just save the day.
100%.
Oh, okay. Acknowledging it.
Yeah, it's certain certainty and standing behind. Yeah, even if it is something that isn't ideal or like does cause problems, it's just saying like, I'm sorry about this, guys, but
knowing it.
We can't do anything. This is like completely an absolute requirement. Yeah, I think it's tricky because you've got within the lending side, obviously, like governance is really important, and separation of and segregation of duties is really important. So I think a lot of lenders do this well, but there are some that struggle with it as well, where you've got salespeople who they are great relationship builders, they understand the product set, so they can speak confidently about what they can do, they can promote a business. The way you put that is perfect, but actually do they understand like some of the variations and the like minute details along a criteria point or around risk in terms of stuff? And like I've talked a few times, well, like a number of times with people and on other pods and stuff like this, the best salespeople are the ones that are technical and understand it. But like you say, doing the simple things are actually most valuable, which is like, don't disappear, fix the binnacle. Like, try and find a solution. You guys have said it, solutions are important. So you're solution focused on your side. If you want to work with lenders that are solution focused as well.
Same mindset.
And I think that's got to be, everyone involved in the process. I guess like from a lender perspective, wearing that out, like there has to be a separation. Like when an application comes in, usually goes to the underwriting team and the credit team, and there is a separation, right? Brokers are paid commission on deals complete, and generally speaking, right, that's usually the package and how it works out. Mm-hmm. So if they're financially invested or will benefit from a deal completing, you guys are financially invested and will benefit from a deal completing. There's almost this kind of like war of like two sides in terms of like the gatekeepers and, you know, and whatnot. So I think like the best lenders are the ones that kind of have underwriters that also are kind of like pro lend. They are able to speak confidently and aren't scared to pick up the phone to brokers, to clients, you know, whatever. So the best, I've always said this, the best hybrid of salespeople and underwriters are salespeople who are also technical like an underwriter. They understand it. They're not going to disappear. You know, you build a relationship with them. They're your contacts. Yeah. The best underwriters are also like salespeople because they can pick up the phone. They're not afraid to do that. They should show some personality. They're not just a, you know, robotic kind of answer for yes or no in terms of what you want to do. But that's the key, I think, in terms of how, you know, I've always tried to promote my teams, sales teams and my underwriting teams to work.
Yeah, makes sense.
Love that.
Nice.
Are we allowed to talk about lenders, or should I say no names? Not in a good way.
No. Oh no, I think like you can promote lenders. I don't think. Well, this is your pod though. I don't know yours.
I won't say the name, but it's a good thing. But one lender, I won't say whether male or female or where they're based. Problem comes up with an underwriter.
Oh, really? Who are you talking about?
Underwriters doing the deal.
Is this like the hive mind of Bridgeport? He didn't know exactly what Joe's talking about before he said it. I do. Yeah. I believe I do anyway.
Yeah.
H. None?
No.
Oh. Maybe not me.
Not as a line. I don't know if that's set.
Yeah.
You say film. So it's Tab.
Right. Okay. Yeah, he said that.
So Sophie at Tab is.
Are you after sponsorship? You're part of it, yeah?
That's what it was straight. It sounds weird, but like, so Tab are a business. They lend hundreds of millions of pounds, big business, and the underwriter does their bit, and the underwriter has a problem, and the underwriter naturally comes to the broker or whoever is with the problem, and the broker then has an outlet, which would be Sophie. And we've had deals where Sophie's gone to the underwriter and jumped on a Teams call with us three. Your point of segregation, it's done, like that bit's been done. But the solution bit is someone's linking it up. And then she'll go into, she'll say, you're pushing it here. It's not going to happen. Okay, facts. We know you got your back. We know you've got our back.
100%.
Or she'll go to the owner and go to his office and say, I think we should be doing this, or no, we shouldn't. And you just know you've got.
Sorry, on your side.
Yeah.
Whereas you have other VDMs that once the deal goes in, you don't see him again.
No.
And when there's a problem, you don't see him again. You're just left with the underwriter who you have no relationship with, and you actually don't know if they're that technical or understand it from a commercial perspective.
But on that point, and what you said a minute ago, is you're right. We as brokers would be incentivized, but so is the lender. The owner of the lender wants to lend money because they get paid. Underwriter, valuer, monitoring surveyor aren't incentivized by that because they get paid typically regardless. I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but it does cause big problems.
Yeah,
because you could say, nah, because you just don't feel that. You might have just not had your coffee, or you're a bit tired. You're just a bit grumpy. And that's frustrating because the borrower's just spent 20 grand to get that no on vow IMS and legals, and then the underwriter just goes, yeah. That's my rant.
It's a different vantage point, isn't it? Yeah, you're completely right. But no, that's like it's a simple solution to, you know, what is effectively quite a simple issue.
Communication, like you say all the time, that is that.
It's the biggest thing in my life.
Just linking,
get all parties
people
together.
Yeah. Or not, just be honest.
It's the same through the legal process, isn't it? Sometimes you see lawyers go back and forth, and like I've got a rule of thumb is if I send more than 2 emails back and forth for somebody, I'm like, I need to pick up the phone because actually we can just do this quicker. It's more effective, more efficient, not the fight. And also, like, you just never ever get that the first is the ideal sort of solution, isn't it? But yeah, effectively, on my point, we'd have to cut here because we've got delivery coming in. Yeah. Before we go into ours, I was talking about, I don't know, we were talking about communication. We were talking about simple solutions to something. Yeah. What else were we talking about? It's been a while.
I can't remember.
Anyway, thank you for joining us for another edition of Finance and Foundations. Feels like the second episode. Yeah, and you were saying,
pulling the hair out.
Shut up! You were saying about the owner of the lender wants to lend. Like, we as lenders, that's also like a verb. It's a doing word. Lending, like we have to lend money to make money. Yeah, we want to do that. So like, if we've got kind of people that can facilitate that and grease the wheels, like we want to lend money. Like that is the whole point. We don't want to find reasons not to lend money.
Yeah, makes sense.
But yeah. Okay. That was meant to be a bigger, eloquent point. That I just
no, it's a great point. It's a great point. In the straight case that every lender wants to lend, but you need the right people greasing the wheels to make it happen, right?
Thank you for doing that.
You're welcome.
It sounded awful.
Right. Thank you for joining us for another edition of Finance and Foundations with our special guest today, Kai Benjamin. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for having me, guys.
Until next time, thanks very much.